Judge, our judge tonight is Steve. As a natural resource professional and Minnesota-based outdoor photographer, Steve has a lifelong relationship with Minnesota's landscapes and with photography. He strives to apply his intimate knowledge of the natural environment, which was developed over a full career in the practice of forestry, to tell photographic stories. His interest in photography was inspired by his father, who was a professional portrait and wedding photographer. He spent countless hours with him on photo shoots and in the darkroom. Yet, when it came time to choose a career, he pursued a degree in forestry and joined the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. As he closed in on completing that career, he discovered photography was waiting for him. Over the past 7 years, he has sought training, taking workshops from established pros, in addition to online coursework and extensive reading. As an active member of the St. Paul Camera Club, he regularly submits work for judging and critiques in monthly salons. His photos have received many awards in club and regional competitions. His work has been displayed in several galleries and is for sale in selected locations. Thank you, Steve, for agreeing to judge our salon tonight.
Thank you, Jill. I just wanted to put this sheet up here. One of the people who trained me in to this judging gig was Daryl Tangen. I think many of you know him. And he always starts off his sessions here with a little explanation of why he does what he does and what's important to him. And I think that's something I like to do so that people kind of understand where I'm coming from and what my values are that are going into this. And I also will try to explain that as I go through the pictures too, where it comes from. So the photo judging criteria, kind of in the order that I evaluate them, is starting with interest. And, interest and impact means a compelling subject, a decisive moment, visually accessible, something that fits with the larger scene. You can have a technically perfect picture, but it also has to be interesting. It has to have a story. And so does the image have something to say? And is there a wow moment in there? Does it evoke some emotion, some thought or challenge? And when there are subjects in the living subjects, particularly in the picture, then its interaction matters. Is the subject engaged with the camera or the surroundings or others in the scene? Those are attractive things to have going on in a photo that adds to the story. And clarity, to me, that means does the eye go where the artist intends? And that's probably one of the biggest things that makes a quality competition photo, is that the photographer has done a successful job of communicating the story and guiding the viewer through the photo. So it starts off with a resting place for the eye generally, and then a journey of exploration. The subject is the center of interest, and the focal point is the area of highest contrast. So they're really, it works best when those are both in the same place. And there really should be no distractions. And this is where composition basics come in, both in the management of light and things like leading lines and rule of thirds and all that stuff helps to clarify the subject and the story. So that's what that means to me. And then creativity, originality, artistry. The general rule is that a usual subject, a common subject, in order to have some impact, has to have an unusual or creative presentation. There's a lot of, especially in club photography, there's a lot of landmarks out there that have been photographed a million times. So when you come in with a common or popular location, what have you done creatively to make that your own vision of that iconic landmark? Exceptional use of light, design, setting, props, intentional effects, all of those are creative and artistic things that can be done with a photograph that set them apart from the others. Extra credit, that's where somebody comes in with just has some notable expertise in framing the image and cropping, composition, lighting, depth of field control, and lens choice, print quality when we're evaluating prints. All of those add something to the image and its quality. And then you get down to the what I call the distractions and fatal flaws. And so this is the stuff that if the picture is working, all of this stuff is working too. It's these are the things that can take a really good picture and knock it down a couple of points because something isn't right. So, exposure problems can be incorrect shutter speed, blown highlights, lost shadows. Focus and sharpness are huge. You can have a great picture, but if it isn't sharp, especially in nature, if the eye isn't sharp on the critter that you've taken a picture of, that can knock it right out of the awards pretty quick. So critical features have to be sharp, and the overall sharpness has to be there. As far as composition goes, use of space, balance, inclusions and mergers, the way you cut off limbs, ears, tails. I mean, there's a right way and a wrong way to do that on people and other animals. A level horizon is a big one. So those are, I'm just kind of listing off the stuff that I'm checking off in my own mind as I go through looking at the photos in a salon. Light, if the color temperature has to be realistic, it has to kind of go with what's in the, you can have color temperature being off and the whole picture is off, and it could be a great picture, but if something is purple, it's supposed to be gray. It's work. Light, the direction of light has to be matching up with the rest of the shadows in the picture, especially if we're using composites. You can have all the light has to come from the same direction. Contrast too high or too low, and visible manipulations. That's when processing or in the creative thing, you don't want to see if manipulations are allowed, photoshopping is allowed, but if there's evidence that it was photoshopped, then that kind of falls into the fatal flaw thing. It's got to be pretty seamless. And then, in processing, digital artifacts, I guess that kind of counts with the manipulations too. Over sharpening is a common one. And, overwrought burning and dodging and vibration and, vibrance and saturation all come into play there. So the way I tend to sort them out is that, a 6, if it's a decent picture, and I generally don't go lower than a 6, because basically that's a picture that has a fatal flaw. There's something that you can't fix to make it any better. And then 7s in a club like this, which is basically a high quality club, and there's a lot of good pictures, but you only allow the judge to give awards to 35 or so % of the photos. There's a lot of pictures that wind up in the 7s because they're basically good photos. Oftentimes they could be made better with editing, and I'll point that out. But there's a lot of them that are just going to be, the only reason that they're 7s is because there was a few pictures that were a little better that got the awards. Competition forces, I just said this, okay, I'm kind of just rereading my notes here. So award levels, the last thing, I guess, based on the judge's opinion, and you may or may not agree with me, and about the best I can do is to be honest with what I like and don't like, and explain myself. And oftentimes when it gets down to, this is the aggravating thing, even for me, when I submit in our St. Paul Camera Club, is that you get a couple of pictures and one has to one gets an award and one doesn't, and why wasn't it? Well, you wind up nitpicking some really tiny details sometimes that made the difference. And that's kind of the way it goes, but just based on the limits, and so that's my process. And I think I'll just leave it at that, and we can start with the pictures.
Okay.
All right. Our assignment this month was architectural or architectural details. So we'll begin with the assignment photos. I'll read the title of each photo. On scores of 8, we'll read the photographer's name as well.
Okay, just before we get going on that, I want one more last announcement to make. We do have an exhibit that will be at the FIPS beginning in September. It will be going for about 6 weeks, and this is open to all our members. It's not judged beforehand, so anything goes. And if you're interested in taking part in the exhibit, let me know or complete the contact form on our website. So thanks to Steve. And here we go.
Okay. Starting with 6s. Here we have Cabin in the Woods.
Okay, when I first saw this, I thought, wow, this is an interesting subject. I love I'd like to see a little more detail on the dovetailed corners on that old cabin. But I didn't look too deeply into it because I realized right away that it is just not sharp. And that is one of those fatal flaws that Kat throws it into the 6. If you have any other pictures of that location that turned out sharp, or you ever go back there, it's a great subject, and I like a lot about it. But like I say, not sharp. Next.
Okay. Church converted.
Okay, I'm not seeing that yet. Oh, there we are. Okay, now this is another great architectural subject, and it was taken in good light. Again, it is not as sharp as it could be. I also think that with a closer view to eliminate the distractions, it would be a much better picture. You've got on the sides, you've got cars, you've got a bright sky out there, and the whole thing could just be brought in a little bit, and so you could really see some more of that detail. But as it is, it also needs to be sharper, which is why it's a 6 and not a 7. Next.
Okay, on to the 7s. We start with architectural details.
That's not
right. This is the atrium at the Pioneer Building.
Okay. You want to go back to architectural details, or have you got that in there? That would be the order, right? Maybe not.
I think there was an
Okay, no, that's okay. We'll just I'll go with it.
Okay,
I
there
can
it
find
is.
it here.
Okay.
Okay, that's the atrium in the Pioneer
Yes.
Pioneer Endicott building. And this is really an interesting, I've taken this picture too, and it's really an interesting spot because to me it's kind of a retrospective of industrial design back when it was also considered art. And they tried to make their industrial fixtures look artistic. And this is with the spiral staircase and everything in there. This is a great example of that. I found the picture at first a little disorienting. It almost looks like I'm looking down a tunnel instead of up a shaft. And I think it's just the perspective and the balance of the top of the picture is it looks more like a roof just because there's more of it up there. And so as I look at them, my question is, what do you want to show the viewer here? The brightest spot in the picture is at the top, right at the end. And, there's a lot of features in here. The spiral staircase, for example, is fascinating. But, when you have that bright light at the end, then, and everything else is kind of darker, you might want to try rearranging the light to point out a particular feature or features that really draw the eye in, and not having it quite so bright at the end of the tunnel, as you would, if you will. Next. Bridge details. Yeah, this is really a well-made abstracted presentation of lines and angles. The only thing I thought is, if it were mine, I would want that cable support with the bolts and everything in it to be a little larger in the screen, because that's really the most interesting thing. That's the place that's going to catch your eye and bring you in. And so I think a crop, giving a little less space on the sides and the bottom, would make it much more interesting. But yeah, a great choice of objects in there to come together into a study in lines and angles and architecture as well. Well photographed. Next.
Okay, conservatory.
Okay, that is a great sunset show. It's a great location to get a good sunset too, and the building itself is a great foreground for a sunset. But given that this is an architectural category, I thought that the building also shows quite a bit of digital noise, and it has kind of a blue cast. I mean, that is a white building, and I felt like the building should be in the primary spot position of visibility, and maybe the sunset as a background or a setting for what you were showing off about the building. And I think the priorities are a little reversed in here. So, a pretty good picture, a little changing of the color on the conservatory to make it white would improve it. And but the noise, I think it might have been just a little bit dark to start with, and that could also be worked on. But I really think that that should be brighter, and the sunset may be a little more into the background. Next.
Okay, Goose Island.
This is a very nice dock at the lake with leading lines type of picture. And I love the monochrome treatment, and it's all sharp. The darkness of the sky, however, looks a little heavy to me, and there are some sensor spots in there that need to be cleaned up. And as long as you're in there doing that stuff, I think that cropping in to tighten up on the dock a little bit, and there's this bright area on the right side of the screen that kind of pulls the eye out away from the dock. If you cropped in and reduce the available space over there, you would have a lot more impact in the photo. Next.
Okay, Hassan to Ask.
Yeah, this is really a stunning architectural subject. I kept looking into the picture, trying to get a look at more of that detail in the tower, because that intricate lattice of work going all the way up the tower is really fascinating. But so I wanted to get closer. That was my first feeling when I looked at it. And also, this is the midday sun. That's a really tough light to try to get a lot of contrast, and I can see there's a lot of texture in this, and it's not showing as much as I would have liked to see it. But the primary thing that caught my eye was that there's this guy walking in the foreground, and I actually found that to be a distraction. I think if he was just a little bit to the right and right in the middle of that arch that's lit with sunlight, it might look a little more deliberate. But he looks kind of like an accidental object in there, and so if it's permitted, as it is right now, I'd take him out of there. But if you think about an architectural picture, the people in there should really be calling attention to the features of the architecture, and that, I think, would have made that a better picture. Next.
Masai Boma.
And this is a really nice photo. It's offering a cultural overview of a village and definitely showing off a different kind of architecture of the primitive grass-covered structures, houses, but or I guess dwellings that you might call them. And but you know, as an architectural photo, I had to say that it's really more about the culture and the village and the surroundings than it is about the architecture, because it's just not close enough to any of these buildings to really get an intimate look at how they're made and really what. I'm sure it's very interesting, the materials and the way it's put together. And to me, as an architectural picture, that's really what I would like to see. Next.
Moon on Onion Dome.
Well, this is certainly an exotic building. And the use of 3 domes is really nice to as kind of a balancing group of elements. Taking it in the moonlight, the moonlit night adds a mystery to the whole scene. And I mean, it's a great time of day to be out there trying to photograph it. I can see the brightness of the moon on the ground and on some of the surfaces up there. But what didn't look right to me is that moon, the sky actually looks more or less manipulated. I mean, I think there's a lot going on up there that wasn't in the original picture. And that moon is not nearly bright enough to be throwing off the light that I'm seeing in the rest of the scene. So that's one of those things where, you know, it's fine to put a moon in there if that is exactly what happened. Whether the moon was there naturally, I suspect it might be added. And then there's a few stars in there that don't quite look right. And so, you know, a nice try on the effects, but because it was obvious to my eye that it wasn't totally natural, I put it down in the 7s. But, you know, a well-made picture in many other ways. Next.
Stone Barn.
The famous Frank Schott Stone Barn. And that's a well-known landmark. And as I was saying earlier, if you have a well-known landmark, you really have to make it your own when you're going to take a picture, because it's photographed by a lot of people. It is really a nice monochrome print, or treatment, I should say. And I think actually with a little cropping and some additional contrast to bring out, you know, to blacken the black, darken the blacks and lighten the lights, you could really get a nice high impact image out of that. But as it is like this, I don't think it's impactful enough to get into the award category. But I think the material is all there. It could easily be a much better picture with some additional attention. Next.
Temple.
Well, this is a very interesting structure, and it's sharp. And but you know, I had to look at trying to decide, well, what is it that you want to show me about this? There is just a lot going on here visually. And I think in terms of a photograph, a competition photograph, it's really best if you just pick out 1 or 2 features or something, some angles or lines that make an interesting composition, and just show that part of the building, because it's really pretty busy as it is. And with the addition of shadows that are adding contrast to areas that kind of interfere with just the basic structure of the building itself, it just turns out to be too busy to work for me. Next.
The Old Corn Crib.
Well, this loosely fits the definition of architecture. I think it needs to be have more interest and beyond just being a corn crib, though. the whites on the end are blown out, which means that what have you got that's for the eye to follow and to look into? I imagine myself moving to the side a little bit and just being able to see the light coming through those slats all the way down the side of the building. You'd get a really interesting study in lines and contrast that way. But they're in the rafters and on the floor. The blacks are so black that a lot of the shadow detail is lost. And in a monochrome, you first of all need to have the whites under control, but as bright as possible. And then in the blacks, in the shadows, you still have to have enough detail that you're not losing the detail in the shadows. So again, with some processing, that might be able to bring some of that light under control, but maybe try a little different angle on that too to make it more interesting. Next.
Union Depot, St. Paul.
Wow, that's a good concept for architecture and history. It's a great wide angle picture and everything is symmetrical, a well taken photograph. The thing that I find most attractive here is the big skylight that's right up as you enter the picture, it's right there looking at you. And to me, that's the thing that I want to see the most attention on and not be distracted from it. And I felt that the windows down the side and especially the windows at the end are so bright that that's just a lot of visual distraction. I think that if the windows were less bright and the interior of that was brighter, there's a lot of room for bumping up exposure in there that would really make that interior pop and give it a bright, airy look, and then would also really showcase that skylight in the beginning of the picture. Next.
Wiseman.
Yeah, another very popular subject. I've taken pictures of this myself, and every time you go there, it's different depending on the light in the sky and the lights that are around it. And this is a great blue hour shot and of a classic architectural icon here in the Twin Cities. Personally, I think it looks underexposed. There's some areas that are awfully dark and where you're starting to lose some detail. And it could be cropped in a little bit from the sides too. It got on the right side, you've got that dormitory in the background with the windows showing, and then on the left side, I know it might take off a little bit of the building, but you got some chimneys and stacks off in the distance, and then a concrete stairway down further on the right or the left side that are all kind of pulling my eye around. And then the one big thing that you really I would recommend taking some attention to is that garage door opening down below. There's lights and it's a lit sign on there, and that's really kind of a major distraction. If that can be darkened, it would be a much better picture just with that alone, and then maybe raising the exposure a little bit, because you really want to see the whole building and you don't want anything else to call attention away from it. So there's a lot of good material there, and it's a good starting point, but I think it needs a little more work. Next. Here we go. This was
Moving on. Oh, architectural details.
The architectural details. Yep. And so as I looked at this, I'm thinking that the subject is what you really want me to look at here is the finial up on top with the cherubs on either side, and that is a good object to be an architectural subject. But from the point of view where this picture is taken, there's an awful lot of stuff in between the camera and that object up there that is pulling me away. Bright light, angles and curves that don't really support each other, and they don't really support the journey up to that point. And so I found it a little bit busy and and not really enough guidance for the eye to get me up there. Although, I did go to it, but it's a little far off, and with a lot of stuff and other stuff to look at that doesn't really magnify that subject. So I think go back and try that one again and take a look around the whole scene. It's really a lot of potential there. Next.
On to the eights. Here we have Nintendo Japanese Garden by Diane Lefty.
Well, Japanese gardens are great spots to go because they are designed to offer harmonious views. And you can see by the design of this that when designing a Japanese garden is a high art itself. And in this one, this is a very nice picture because the photographer made sure that the main subject of the picture was obvious and pleasant to look at. It's definitely a piece of architecture that's interesting, along with the little bridge. And the infrared treatment is I don't know that it doesn't add much, but I don't think it takes anything away either. It's an interesting treatment, and I don't have any problem with that. I actually like the whole picture, the composition and processing to manage the light is all very good. The only nitpick I could say about it is that the bright grass here in the foreground on the lower right side is a distraction to me. And either a slight crop to kind of get that out of there or to lower the light levels there so that isn't the first thing that jumps at me when I come into the picture would bump it up a notch or two. Okay, next.
Okay, Dairy Queen by Marion Sir.
This was really a very nice picture just because of the subject. It's a very interesting subject as a piece of architecture. It's a classic living relic of a day gone by, and it's well exposed and it's sharp, and the guy at the service window to me really supports the story. That is the point which really brings me into the scene. So as I look around at the picture, the bright yellow wall on the left and that group of people sitting over there, it would be very nice if they were darker, if that whole part was darker, even cropped in a little bit. And I think the guy who's standing in line could be a little brighter. The back of his body is awfully dark, and if he was just a little bit brighter, raise the shadows a little bit, he would be the main entry point for the subject. And boy, you can just have a treat looking at all the little signs and all of the things and details in that building. It's a very interesting shot. Next.
Minnesota Capitol Rotunda, Marianne Jerks.
Okay, this is a building that you'd think it would be easy to photograph because it's got all its spectacular features, but really trying to pull it all into one place and get something interesting out of there. There's so much detail that it's easy to take a picture that has too much going on in it. And so this is an example of kind of boiling it down to something that I can get into and explore and not find all of the distractions too obvious. Particularly, I like the reddish brown leather couch that's across the view on that second level. And to me, that's a really nice opening point of interest. I think the image would be even stronger if the top and the bottom were cropped out a little bit. The points of the stars down on the floor, that's kind of a bright spot. And then the area above the arch really doesn't add much. It kind of pulls me away. And bringing those down, minimizing those a bit would make that that point where my eye wants to go even stronger. Very nice picture, though.
The Classic Beach House by Melissa Anderson.
And you know, you don't even need the title to say what this is. I think all of the elements are there, the weathered boards, the palm trees. They give truth to the title, and there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of history and emotion that can be evoked by finding an old building like this and just putting it in context. I like that the front window, the leading window there is a little bit brighter than the back one, so it gives me a nice visual flow around the building. The only thing that I would alter, and this is a real nitpick here, but I think the sign, the private parking sign there could be a little darker, because, you know, anytime you've got writing on a building that doesn't have a lot of writing on it, that pulls the eye right into that sign, and that's really not where you want to go first. I think there's a lot of other interesting stuff, and especially that window that to me would be the main point of interest. Very nice picture, though. And I like the color treatment, by the way. Yeah, that's okay. Next.
On to the nines, we have Minnesota Capitol Window, Mary Ann Jerks.
Yeah, this is a wow for me. It was, I think I would call it an architectural still life. It's a small, relatively small subject, but there's just a lot of history and kind of a calming symmetry to the whole thing. The craftsmanship. I mean, who makes a window these days that has this much art in it and craft? And it's a window that I'm thinking is kind of in an out of the way place. It's not necessarily a you know, a showcase for the building. So I like the warm reds around the outside edge, and then the cool blues in the middle. And it's just a story of craftsmanship and a time gone by, and very well presented. The light is just beautifully handled. Next.
Sabalon Sunset, J. Olson Gold. Sorry.
Well, the photographer planned well to be here at the right time. There's no question what the center of interest is. It's well positioned in the frame, and you know, that golden light. I'm guessing, and I know this is a drone shot, which is great. This is exactly the way to use one, I think. The light on that steeple probably doesn't last very long, and so to get there at the right time and be ready for that. In addition, you've got that low light on the fields in the background, which add an ambiance to the whole picture that is wonderful. The only critique I would have is in the lower left-hand part of the picture. It's kind of dark and dull down there, and then that's not really adding a lot. I know you wanted to go around the square of that cemetery, but you know, if it was me, I might crop that in a little bit, because that just brings more attention onto that beautiful church and that glowing steeple. Next. All right, people.
Jay.
What the heck is this?
This should be a 10.
It is. And it's
I must have missed the slide. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, did you miss this? That's right. I don't know. Well, it's a 10 on my score sheet that I sent you.
It's
so.
a 10.
All right, great. This is admittedly a marginal definition of architecture, but this one gets the Creative Seeing Award for the night. Plus, it's great planning to catch the shadow and the position where everything is basically perpendicular to the structure itself, and all of the lines are squared up, and the sunlight is at a beautiful angle, and there isn't a track in the snow. It's perfectly fresh snow, a little bit bumpy, but you know, no distractions through there at all. And I just think it was well seen and well photographed, and a beautiful and a fun picture. I laughed out loud when I saw this one because it was just so clever. Next.
10, and it's The Little
Just
Green
read-
Church by Melissa Anderson.
Yeah, this you know, I love this picture. It's another church picture, but what really struck me about this one was the use of processing to make sure that those three windows are the main point of interest. They come together, and you know, there's a lot going on in the structure of that church. There's stuff in the background, stuff in front, and yet my eye goes right to the main window and then to the other two. And you know, it's a wonderful scene. Besides, I think the moody sky looks like it's about to rain, and yet the church doors are open. Kind of makes you want to go inside and see what else is in there. So I just felt it was very interesting, well portrayed, and the artist did a great job of picking out the things that made it interesting to them, and showed that to the viewer, which is really the way I think architectural photography works best. And so it's just a wonderful shot. Next.
All right, we're on to the creative category, starting with 7s. Our first one should be Alien.
Well, this is a fun category because you can tell people had a lot of fun trying to create something, and you know, using some very creative techniques. And I enjoyed every one of these in one way or another. And this one, I think Alien is a good title because I can't tell what it is, and I guess I'm not supposed to be able to tell what it is, but definitely looks otherworldly. The processing is very interesting. The color scheme is nice, and the little specks of red in there among the blue is a nice contrasting or complementary color to make it a pleasing thing to look at. But I am looking for a little bit of visual path. You know, all of those coils or circles are not really differentiated from one another that much. And I think if the maker could take the viewer on a little tour, either by maybe backing off a little bit and having a little bit of a visual journey through there, or a little more manipulation with light and color, it would be a better picture. But you know, a lot of fun to look at nonetheless. Next.
Okay, Arctic Fox at Play.
Yeah, I can see this on the cover of a book somewhere, actually. It was another fun, creative work, and all the elements present add to the story. Two things that I found distracting, though, were that first of all, the background around the dog, especially on the left side, is pretty bright. It's brighter than the dog, and it kind of pulls me off. You know, the dog, I should say the wolf. I'd like to see that wolf popping off the page, and not have that brightness around it kind of pulling me back in to the side. And also the leaf in the dog's mouth, it's a nice touch. It's a fun thing to put in there, but it is so rich and saturated that it really takes away attention from the eyes. And that picture has really, that wolf has really good eyes. And I mean, they're real, and they're looking right at the camera. And that's a great feature to bring somebody right into the picture. And I thought if that leaf was a little more subdued, and the surrounding snow was a little more subdued, that it would be much more about the wolf and the wolf's eyes, which what I think would just make it so much better. Next.
Fabio, the Warrior Hawk.
What a great title and a fun creation. Another one. It's really several elements well assembled to tell a story. There's a lot of competition, however, for the brightest spot in the picture. The hawk is really, it's got a nice clear eye, and obviously a real hawk probably sitting on a real telephone or electric pole. But the light above its head and the lightning, it's so bright, it's almost a step too far. I think if that was more part of the background in the intensity of the light, it would bring more attention onto the right around the head of the hawk and that eye, which is really where I want to go. It could be better just by managing the light, but yeah, a great fun concept, and I enjoyed the picture.
Foggy morning in the swamp.
So since we're in the creative category here, I'm kind of looking at stuff that was so heavy, that was you really used some tools that that took it out of the realm almost of a photograph. This is a really nice base photo of a photogenic moose, and I know these photos are hard to get, and so it's wonderful in that way. But as a creative entry, I just felt more could be done with light and texture. The background is so bright it kind of overpowers the subject, and I understand the atmosphere of a foggy morning, but I think it's a little bit flat in terms of the blacks and the grays, and so it looked a little washed out to me, but I recognize that there's a great picture in there. And, sometimes when these things are, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, that scoring at a 7 just means that, first of all, the 8s, there was not enough room for all of these to be 8s, but also if it's scored a 7, you can work it up a little bit if you want to, and it can be re-entered at a later time. Once you get your award, then you're kind of done for the year, as I understand it. That's the way our club works anyway. So I think this is one that would really benefit from a little more contrast, and something that would bring that moose out a little bit without destroying the mood of the fog, because it's obviously a foggy morning, and that's enough, I guess. Next.
Frost at the Little Red Barn on the Prairie.
Well, this is a very nice composition. You got a trio of subjects here. It's an idyllic farm scene, and the structures stand out nicely and on their own. And the trees are obviously covered in frost. And my issue with the creative aspect of this is that I don't think the creative work on this actually helped the picture that much, because those trees look a little bit muddy. I mean, the frost, and I think the frost on the trees has to be bright, because it is naturally. If it was brighter than the sky and brighter than the snow, that would be a spectacular scene. But as it is, I think the sky brighter than the trees, and the trees being kind of an off brownish white, that just didn't work for me in terms of frost, which I just wish was a lot whiter and brighter. Next. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, another fun fantasy photo. And it's got a nice visual flow, no pun intended. But, all the elements in here, it just gives it a real otherworldly, kind of a sci-fi fantasy. Again, another one that would make a good book cover, I think, for the right kind of a novel. The things that I found distracting, however, is that If that girl is going through the hoop, why is her hair on the other side of the ring? I thought that that really had to be, if it's still attached to her head and she just went through there, I think it has to be inside the ring. And then also where her neck and her head attaches to her shoulders, there's kind of a dark area there. It looks like it's not a natural attachment. And so those two things I found distracting, the hair in particular, but a great piece of work, certainly more than I could ever hope to do in Photoshop or any other graphic arts program. Next.
Orchard truck.
This is a really interesting subject and in an environment that works. It complements the story of what this truck does. And the setting, as I looked at this, I can imagine this truck being used to haul dirt around this farm and haul grapes back to the winery, and just a whole history of work and the labor of love that keeps a place like this alive. But in terms of what I found distracting, that shiny chrome is actually quite a bit brighter than the rest of the truck, and that back window has that bright ring that really just pulls me into that, and I go right past the truck and everything else and look at that bright ring on the back window. I think both of those things could be controlled, and I think the truck could be a little brighter, and that would be the star of the show, and not the chrome, not the back window, but the truck itself. You could draw some more attention to that, and it would it's a wonderful picture as it is, but it could be so much better with a little more light management. Next.
Okay, on to the eights. We'll start with Bird Prayer by Kathy.
Yeah, this is a beautiful bird, and a full display of detailed feathers, caught in midair, obviously, and with an expertly applied mask, I presume. And I think it's a great picture. It would be better, and this is kind of a picky nature thing. It would be better if the tip of the bird's beak wasn't hidden by the wing. That's the only thing that I found a bit distracting. That's why it was an 8 and not a 10, but really a very well done picture. Next.
And we'll start with Elena. Ricky.
Well, this is definitely a compelling moment of rapt attention. I love the gradations of light and shadow that play across her face, and the look in her eyes that she is just paying close attention to something, and it's obviously something that really is she finds amazing. She just has that look of awe and attentiveness that makes for a wonderful portrait. I also think that the vignetting is very effective, and just overall a wonderful photo. Even the fur in front of her face to just kind of show that this is a cold environment, and yet she seems oblivious to that because of whatever it is that's holding her attention. And cute kid besides. Next.
Waxwing by Diane Herman.
So yeah, this is to me, this looked like an intense moment for the bird. I know when these birds are picking away at the berries and fruits on the trees, especially in the wintertime when they get a little scarce, they can get pretty competitive, and one bird can be attacking the other one, trying to get it out of there, and that's my bunch of berries. And so the bird grabs that berry and gets the heck out of there so that they can take it to a safe place and go eat it. So I find that whole story is very compelling. And I also like the subtle application of the antique look. And it doesn't distract from the action. It was applied in a way that I guess that's the creative aspect of it. That background was applied in a way that didn't take anything away from the bird and the bunch of fruit that's just perfectly positioned there that kind of completes the story. Excuse me. So well done.
Reading Takes You Everywhere by Sue Oberstar.
Well, a very well done concept and a message and a convincing kid. Obviously having some fun with this. I think all the elements are well handled. The only suggestion that I had was that it appeared to me that the kids' eyes were looking more above the books than toward them. And I know that's a tough one to do when you're trying to set that up and then putting the elements in afterward. But the books are great and everything. But if it was, I mean, to be perfect, you know, here I am nitpicking again, but if it was to be perfect, I'd say that if her eyes were just looking a little more at the books, it would be a little more harmonious to my eye. Next.
Okay. The 10. Zoom Zoom by Terry Butler.
Yeah, that's a zoom zoom, all right. I think that's a great title. Wonderful isolation of a high impact subject. There's a really nice gradation of light that starts at the front and goes to the back. It kind of fades toward the back. I mean, just a wonderful job of, I'm guessing there might have been some light painting or something involved with that, but yeah, it was just wonderfully done. And isolated all around, and then putting that cool speed streak or speed smear in the back. And to me, that just is there to emphasize what's under the hood. And it makes the car look fast, even though it's an old car, and it's definitely a street rod, and that tells part of the story too. So great job on that one.
On to the nature category. We'll start with the 7s. Antelope. Sorry.
Oops.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I can find it here.
Good, because
Okay.
this is public aid.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, this is a crisp shot of a swan with the water splashes all frozen in time, and obviously the story about what's going on right there is some action, and the swan is doing something. I always think that an animal that's behaving in its own environment and showing its behaviors is more interesting than one that's just sitting there doing nothing, basically. So I guess the distractions, or not necessarily distractions, but the things I found that the picture was lacking a bit in is that the light is fairly flat, and the birds' surroundings are fairly bright. So if it was my picture, I would try to get a little more brightness on the head, you know, raise the shadows a bit and bring out some of that catch light in the eye, so that because that really is the, you know, that's kind of the heart and soul of the bird, is that eye and the head, and then you start from there and start looking over the rest of the bird. So the fact that the natural light really wasn't providing that, I think, you know, and some burning and dodging can really help with that. And, you know, and then maybe even a little more of a vignette there that kind of pulls the light in around the bird so that there isn't so much up along the edges. It'd be a great picture. The material is all there. It's a great picture as it is, but in terms of competition, I think it could have a little more impact with a few well thought out changes. Next.
Hey, that other one was
There we
one
go.
is
Yes.
antelope horns.
Yeah, and by the way, this antelope really does have nice horns. They look a little bit larger and with a nice curl above what you traditionally see, at least from what I've seen out in the Black Hills. This one is pretty exceptional.
Oh,
So
that's
it's a worthy, pardon? Oh, it's a worthy subject. I think that in terms of the total picture, the impact of the antelope itself, the bright plants in the foreground really are too bright, and they pull away that. You want to go right into those eyes, those beautiful eyes, and there's catch lights there, and they're sharp, and that's really the place I want to go as I look at this. And then the other thing that I noticed is that on the back of the antelope, it could really be cropped in. I think, just like where you cut animals off, there's a place to cut and there's a place that where it looks intentional, and other places it looks kind of accidental. And I think if that right, excuse me, that the right side was pulled in just a little bit so that the edge of the picture came through the haunch of the animal instead of just kind of cutting off the backside of the leg, it would look a lot more intentional, and it also brings more of the attention off the body and right onto the head and those antlers, which is what you really want front and center. So with a couple of changes that would really go up a notch or two. Next.
Excuse me for my interruption here, but I've got 20 to 8, and I know your comments are so important to us, Steve, but maybe we could try to go through just some of these a little quicker.
Oh, yeah, okay. I tried to be brief on my comments, but now I'm kind of elaborating a little more. So I will try to click along on this. There are, how many pictures were there? There was quite a few anyway. So, but yeah, I'll keep it.
Big group.
Okay, so
Okay, early morning gator. Sorry.
Yeah. This is sharp and imposing, and that gator is nice and close. On my screen, the gator looks noticeably more purple than gray, however. If the water around the gator were slightly darkened with a vignette, it would add impact, but I think you got to get that red cast out of there, and then you've got something that is really a cool picture, cooler than the one that's there right now. Next.
Frozen pond.
Well, a hole of this shape in the ice can be mysterious. To me, it looks like trouble. And I liked that choice of photographing that for that reason. But the image is not as compelling as it could be. I think that the basics are there, but I would play around with the brightness and contrast and cropping some to zero in on that foreboding mystery that's really the heart and soul of that picture, and try to get some of that brightness around it to be a little bit lower, so that the eye just looks at the most interesting part of the picture, which is very interesting. Next.
Kettle River.
Okay, this is a lovely fall scene. A good choice of exposure to convey motion in the water. And as I move beyond the closest rocks in the water, however, the composition, I think, pulls me in two directions. One straight back into the forest, and then the other that wants to go upstream. I think some cropping and light management, the photographer, could make a choice about that and help the eye to take the path that's the one you really want them to take. But to me, that could be clarified. Great picture there. Next.
Bird with clam.
Okay, this is a good moment and a sharp subject. It's an example of what I said. You catch a bird doing something that's part of their daily life, and it's more interesting than if they're just standing there. The problem with this one is that a head-on pose is really challenging because you really don't get to see as much of the bird as you want to. I think if the bird was made to stand out more from the background and the color balance was adjusted to bring out a little more of its color, because the light is pretty flat. It was probably a very hazy day looking by the absence of shadow there, that the image would be much better. Next.
Curious, oh, this is the 8th, Kathy Lauer's Curious Wolf Puppies.
Very cute pups, very sharp, clear eyes, and they appear engaged with something in their environment, and they're engaged with each other. The distraction I found here was that the log in the foreground and the plants in the background are really quite busy. You know, if they weren't such cute pups and the two of them engaged so well, you know, it would have been scored lower, but I think it could be higher just by managing some of those distractions, because they really.
This actually was done by Larry Weinman.
Okay, next.
Apologies. Okay, so then table for 2 must be Larry as well.
Same member number, yeah. Okay, so filling the frame with 2 ants gives plenty of sharp detail to explore. It is quite bright around the edges, but other than that, it's a really well done picture of a macro with the ants sharp in all the right places. Really interesting. Next.
Big blue heron fishing. This is the 9s. No, it's not. This is prairie smoke.
Yeah, it is, but the big blue heron is. This is the prairie smoke. I can handle this.
Marianne, sir.
Yeah, this is really nicely photographed. This is the early flower stage of prairie smoke versus the later stage that most people try to photograph with the wispy seeds emerging from the pod. I like the focus on the forward flower. I mean, that's proper. And the inclusion of a second plant in the background really adds some depth to the whole picture. Wonderfully done and great light. There's
now we have blue heron fishing by Marv
Springer. What I call a wow moment. The bird position and action really couldn't be better. If I was going to be picky, I'd say it's a little bit bright right above and directly behind the bird. That golden thing back there is a bit of a distraction, but other than that, that's a great moment and a very sharp, beautifully detailed picture.
Hummingbird on Perch by Diane Herman.
And I can't imagine how this could be any better. This is a beautifully sharp picture, close up, perfectly posed of a very beautiful hummingbird. I guess this is what happens when preparedness meets opportunity, and then the magic happens. The background light is perfect as well. That blue light just along the back of the bird is a great complement to defining the edge of that bird. Next.
All right, we're on to the pictorial category. First, our 7, starting with annual wreath across Fort Snelling National Cemetery.
Well, this is a strong story here, and it's a strong story of remembrance and duty. And but to convey what you felt and saw, which I would guess would be profound, you really have to boil the image down to its basics. And you know, a solitary wreath in the foreground position and the others further back would be great, but you got several wreaths kind of all bunched together there, and it's obviously where you want the eye to go, but I think it's not a well-defined subject. So I think, and also I think none of the foreground grave markers should be cut off halfway up. So finding a place where maybe you can get a little cleaner entry and then start with one wreath and then have the view go out. The view that goes out, on to infinity there in the back is wonderful. And so nice picture.
Cascada pane.
And this was a tough call because there is a whole lot of potential here, and I know it's an exotic location and a wonderful falls or cascade. And I just felt that the light was a little flat and the contrast was kind of low, which wasn't helping much. So great location. I think it just needs a little punch to get up into the award category, which I think can easily be done. Next.
Cold day for Cold Stone.
This is a very well-made monochrome. The tones are handled well, but the story isn't quite coming through for me. What am I supposed to feel here? I think if you had a couple of footprints going up to the door and walking away, or a kid standing in the door peering through the window to wish he could get inside, it would be a really much stronger picture. But as it is, it's a well done monochrome. The story didn't connect that much with me. Next.
Lone tree.
Okay, this is the classic lone tree leading lines photo, a common theme, and this is a good example. I think the rime ice is what makes this one exceptional. However, the ice doesn't really pop out against the background as much as I think it could. Trying to get a little more contrast there between the sky and the bright edges of the trees would be wonderful. And I think a slight crop maybe along the lower left and bring some of that empty road in there that really isn't adding much to the picture, put more attention on the tree. It would be a much stronger picture. Next.
Look between the rocks.
Well, okay, I did, and there's a lighthouse out there. And it's a nice picture. It's fanciful tourism photo, I would call it, which is fine as far as it goes, but I think the rock piles are not that unique. So the picture itself was not extremely compelling, but and also the lighthouse is awfully small. I think, in designing that picture, if you want the rock stacks, go find some or make some really nice ones and then knock them down before you go, and have that lighthouse a little bigger in the frame, and it would be a great concept. Next.
Mother love.
Yes, mother love indeed, a very tender moment. Mom is actually obviously very happy there. It's well composed and exposed, and the vignette is very effective. I just felt that the child's face should be more visible. You really don't see the interaction between the mother and child. The kid looks like maybe he's chewing on his fingers because he's teething and drooling, and that could all be true. But either, I want to see some of his eye or some of the mouth that shows that he's actually having a great time as well as his mother is. Next.
Red candle.
This is a very nice seasonal still life. It's very well done in terms of lighting and composition, and the arrangement is wonderful. My only misgiving was that because this is so up close, I didn't like the fact that the greenery is all artificial. I can see the plastic in there, and I think it was quite obvious to me. And I think if you're going to do something that is this beautiful and this close up, that the greenery should be all live material. Next.
St. Croix sunset.
Well, a wonderful sunset and a great composition. I think the ground features are add to it, and the lines go right down the river into the sunset with detail on either side. My issue with this one was that the exposure, I think, was quite low to begin with, and maybe in trying to boost that a little bit, it created a lot of noise. You've got kind of that purplish cast and a lot of noise and loss of detail in the leaves and the branches. And to me, that's that's not it's obvious enough that the sunset doesn't overcome that for me. So it's just too distracting with the noise in there, the way the original exposure probably led to. Next.
String Lake Morning.
Well, this is another tough one here because this is such a beautiful scene. It's wonderfully sharp and well exposed. But what I noticed is, and actually when I got to the reflection, I guess that was the one thing that I thought, well, that mountain looks kind of cut off just before the tip. And like, we talk about cutting off the tips of things. The rules, I think, there would be the same as as it is on an animal or a human. You got to make it look like it's intentional, and that looks like you just ran out of room. So I would say that is an issue, and then a little bit bright in the lower corner and on the right side and the upper. But as I looked at it, I think just holding my hand up there, cropping it in on the right side and pulling that reflection in the lake up so where you're really looking at the trees as the reflection and not the mountain, since you can't fit it all in anyway, that would really make that a much stronger picture. Next.
This is Wolf Stare.
Okay, wonderful face and eyes, and the eyes are nice and sharp. It's a moody shot. I like that. The area around the wolf, however, is awfully dark. And I think having the wolf just light enough so you can see the outline of the body and the head, that would be a much stronger picture. Because otherwise you've got a lot of empty space around there, and which it's not a terrible thing, but I think as far as bringing out a little more of that shadow detail, you could have a much stronger picture. Next.
Okay, on to the eights. We have Melissa Anderson's Frozen.
Great picture. I don't know where you found those icy covered trees. It looks like it, but it was a great find and a great foreground. A night sky picture that is a strong picture and a great sky. The foreground even makes it better. What I felt that as I looked at this, though, is that those trees and the ice-covered trees are almost too subdued. I mean, if it was just a little brighter, it would be a much better picture because there's a lot of stuff to look at there, and they would add a lot to it. Next.
Meteors, Jupiter, and the Milky Way by Mary Ann Jerks.
Well, all I know is doing a fair bit of night sky photography myself is that I have never shot a meteor shower because, as we all know, they don't come like a shower. It's like one meteor and then maybe a few minutes later, if you're lucky, another one and another one. So you've got to stand there a long time snapping picture after picture in order to get a bunch of meteors in one shot. So it's a lot of skill and planning and patience that it takes to get a picture like this, and the sky is very well done. My nitpick would be to say that even if there is a knockout sky, I think the foreground should be given a little more thought because there's a lot of open water between the camera and that wonderful Milky Way. And, with the little island on the side and a little bit of land sticking out below, it looks a little more like an afterthought than a contributing foreground, but still wonderful, wonderful sky.
Now we're on the nines. Fence Line Sunset by J. Olson Good.
Another example of what I'm going to call creative seeing, a great vision here. A very nice arrangement of agricultural elements displaying texture, color, patterns, angles, vertical dimension. It all comes together into just an extremely interesting photo. And if you look at it for just a second, you know exactly what it is. but you've probably never seen it from this point of view before. So well done. Next.
Let Sleeping Dogs Lie by Pat Chaconis.
Yeah, I got to guess this dog probably looks like this most of the time. It's a very, very cute, soulful looking face, and very expressive. And the picture is well composed and right up close enough and fill the frame with the dog. And that is all wonderful. The only thing I would do, probably a little bit of a nitpick here, is the back of the dog is more or less brighter than the face. And I think if that was toned down just a little bit, all the attention would be on that wonderful, moody looking face. Next.
El Tus Manos, The Power of Your Hands by Fred Sobotka.
Wow, wow, wow.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is a picture that is just rich with cultural symbolism. But most people are aware of the Day of the Dead, which in Latino culture is the same day as that the European cultures celebrate All Saints' Day. And this photo is just so rich with powerful symbolism of the dead honored and remembered while they watch over the new life. The strongest photo I've seen in a very long time. All I can say is bravo, well done.
And here's another one from Fred, Lights.
Here you got a delightful story here of Christmas lights and seasonal cheer. I think the model's softly lit face and engaging expression are endearing. It's a well-executed concept, not completely original. I've seen other people do this, but this one is done very well, and the eyes have it here. Wonderful picture. And that's it, I think, right? Did we get them all?
That's it. Yeah. Yes,
All
we
right.
did eventually. Thank you,
And
Steve.
it's 8 o'clock. We're right on time.
We made it.
Thanks for